Rain dripped from the iron awning above Lucian De Rossi's nightclub, forming narrow rivers down the cobblestone street. The city had gone quiet after midnight. Only the sea and the sound of tires on wet pavement broke the silence. Behind the club, near the delivery gate, 2 men dragged someone, out of the shadows. Caught her again, one of them grunted. Yanking a small wrist, the girl stumbled forward, half-soaked, one shoe missing. Her hair clung to her face, her breathing short and sharp like she'd been running. She wasn't much older than 20. Lucian's men were used to rats in the alleys, thieves, beggars, addicts. But this one didn't look like any of them. Her clothes were clean ones, the kind that didn't belong on the street. But her left leg dragged uselessly behind her, the limp obvious and painful. Boss said, "Keep the back clear," the taller guard muttered. "She's been sneaking around here for days," the other laughed. "Maybe she's looking for work." He raised his hand, half for a joke, half to scare her. That's when she screamed, not loud, but enough to freeze the alley. "Don't hurt me." Her voice cracked, desperate and raw. "I can't walk." The rain seemed to stop. For a long second, nobody moved. The taller man lowered his arm, glancing toward the shadowed doorway. Lucian had been watching. He stepped out slowly, his leather shoes tapping against wet stone, the smoke from his cigarette curling around the faint glow of the exit light. His presence was quiet but heavy, the kind that made people straighten without knowing why. The girl shrank back, trembling, eyes wide and unfocused. Lucian studied her. The thin frame, the limp, the torn knee brace just visible beneath soaked jeans. She was shivering hard, but not from the cold alone. "Who is she?" he asked. His voice was calm, deep, and steady, the kind of calm that carried more threat than shouting ever could. "Caught her behind the trucks," the taller guard said. "Probably casing the place. Could be a distraction." Lucian flicked the cigarette into the puddle, watching the ember hiss out. "A distraction?" He stepped closer. The guards shifted uneasily. The girl tried to stand straighter, but her leg folded beneath her. She went down hard onto one knee. "I wasn't stealing," she whispered. I was hungry." Lucian crouched slightly, eyes level with hers. Rain dripped from his hair onto his coat collar. "Hungry enough to risk getting caught here?" She nodded, lips trembling. "There's food in the dumpsters after midnight." "You throw out enough for 10 people. Something about the way she said it, plain, factual, without self-pity, made him pause. Her eyes weren't begging. They were tired, the kind of tired that came from running too long, from being unseen too long. One of his men shifted beside him. "Want us to get rid of her?" Lucian didn't answer right away. His gaze dropped to the leg brace. Metal hinges rusted, straps frayed. Her jeans were worn thin at the knees, wet and torn. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl swallowed hard. "Alina? Alina what?" "Alina Kova." He tilted his head slightly. "Kova, you're not from here." "Novigrad," she said. "North side." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of the sea, salt and diesel and rain. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn echoed. Lucian straightened. "You live on the street?" "Yes, and you can't walk?" She hesitated. "Sometimes. Not far. Why?" Her eyes flicked down. Accident. That word hit harder than it should have. Lucian's jaw tightened. He looked at his men again, then back at her. "Get her off the ground," he said quietly. The taller guard frowned. "Boss, she could... now." They obeyed without another word, pulling her gently to her feet. She winced but didn't make a sound. Lucian shrugged off his coat and handed it to her. She stared at it, confused. "Take it," he said. "You're freezing," the moment stretched. The rain returned, soft and steady. She took the coat, slowly, like it might disappear if she moved too fast. Lucian turned toward the alley's exit, lighting another cigarette. His voice drifted through the smoke and rain. "Bring her inside," he said. "Nobody touches her." The guards exchanged uncertain looks, but none of them argued. The girl followed, limping, the coat hanging off her shoulders. The sound of her uneven footsteps echoed faintly behind him. Inside the club, the bass from the main floor thrummed through the walls, but Lucian didn't hear it. His mind had already gone somewhere else. Somewhere darker, older. He didn't know why he'd stopped them. He didn't know why that single broken sentence, "Don't hurt me, I can't walk," had felt like a knife sliding under his armor. But he knew one thing. Something about that girl had just cracked open a part of him he thought was long dead, and he hated that it did. Inside, the air changed. Warmth from the club's kitchen wrapped around them, thick with garlic, smoke, and the echo of bass bleeding through the floorboards. The service corridor glowed with the dull orange of utility bulbs. Lucian walked ahead, the click of his shoes steady and sharp. Behind him, Alina limped, clutching his coat to her chest. Every few steps she caught herself against the wall, breath shallow, trying not to slow the men guiding her. He pushed open a door at the end of the hallway. A small private lounge waited beyond. Velvet chairs, low lighting, a single crystal bottle half empty on the table. The windows looked out over the rain-blurred harbor. "Sit," he said. She obeyed immediately, lowering herself into the nearest chair, careful with her leg. Her fingers trembled as she unfastened the wet brace strap. The skin beneath was raw and bruised. Lucian poured whiskey into a glass, then another. He handed one to her. She hesitated. "It'll warm you," he said. "I don't drink." "Then hold it," he replied. "At least your hands will stop shaking." She did. The amber liquid caught the light, trembling with her grip. He sat opposite her, elbows on his knees. For a long while, neither spoke. Only the hum of the fridge and the rain tapping the glass filled the room. Finally, he asked, "How long have you been living out there?" 8 months, she said softly. "Since my mother died? Any family?" She shook her head. "None that would claim me." Lucian leaned back. The answer shouldn't have meant anything to him, but it did. He'd heard that tone before. Not self-pity, just the quiet math of someone who'd already counted what they'd lost. "You said accident," he reminded her. "What happened?" Her eyes lowered. "A car, late at night. Black big engine. I was crossing the road after work. It came fast. I heard music playing from inside, loud. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later." Lucian's jaw tightened. His club cars were black. Big engines. Music loud enough to drown sirens. "Did you see who was driving?" She shook her head. "No, but someone came after. Paid the doctors. They said it was an anonymous donation." He frowned. "You think they were connected?" "I think they wanted me quiet," she said. "The police never found the car." A slow exhale escaped him. The weight in his chest thickened. Alina rubbed her hands together for warmth. "I was studying nursing before. Couldn't afford the therapy. I play violin sometimes for coins. That's how I live." He noticed the faint ridges on her fingertips, calluses left by strings. "You play here?" "Sometimes on the promenade. When it's dry?" Lucian nodded once, more to himself than her. He stood and walked to the cabinet behind him. Inside were folded towels and a small med kit, leftover from nights when deals turned ugly. He set them beside her. "Let me see your leg," she froze. "No, it's fine." "Let me see it," he repeated, quieter. Reluctantly, she lifted the torn fabric. The brace slipped loose. Beneath it, a thin surgical scar traced her thigh, pale against the bruised skin. Swelling had begun again from walking in the cold. Lucian cleaned the cut gently, his movements precise, practiced. "You've done this before," she murmured. He glanced up. "Long time ago?" "Field medic, before this life." Her eyes met his. Curious, almost searching. "Then why this life?" He didn't answer. The silence said enough. After a moment, he taped the brace and adjusted the strap. "You need rest, not pavement." "You'll stay tonight." Her brow furrowed. "Here? Upstairs? There's a spare room. I can't." "You can," he interrupted. "I said you will." The tone made even the guards at the door straighten. Alina's eyes flicked between them, fear returning. "You're not going to hurt me, are you?" Lucian's hand stilled. The question cut deeper than he expected. He met her gaze, voice low. "No one in this house touches you. That's my word." The words hung heavy in the air, final as a verdict. He turned to Marek, the lieutenant who had been silent until now. "Find dry clothes, something simple. Food from the kitchen. Soup, bread." Marek frowned slightly. Boss, you sure? We don't know who she... Lucian's eyes flicked up. Do it. Merrick left without another sound. Lucian poured another drink for himself, the glass clinking softly. The storm outside deepened. Thunder rolled over the bay. Alina leaned back, exhausted. Why are you helping me? She asked finally. Lucian looked at her, expression unreadable. Maybe I owe the world one good deed. You don't even know me. Maybe that's why it counts. She tried to smile, but the effort faded into a shiver. Lucian stood, moving to the window. The city lights shimmered across the wet stone roofs below. From up here, Dubrovnik looked clean, peaceful, a lie he'd built himself. Behind him, Alina's voice was barely audible. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself. He glanced over his shoulder, caught the faint spark of defiance in her tired eyes, and almost smiled. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow we'll see what can be fixed. When Alina opened her eyes, sunlight was already pouring through the slatted blinds, a soft gold that turned the room's stone walls warm. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The sheets were clean, the air smelled faintly of coffee and sea salt, and there was silence, the kind of silence she hadn't known in months. Her leg throbbed when she tried to move. The brace had been adjusted. Someone had cleaned and rewrapped the bandages during the night. She pushed herself up, wincing, scanning the small room. A folded pile of clothes sat on a chair. Jeans, a gray sweater, socks. Through the open window came the muted hum of the harbor. Gulls cried somewhere beyond the rooftops. She could almost pretend this was a hotel. Almost. A knock at the door startled her. Come in, she said softly. Merrick entered carrying a tray. Coffee, bread, a bowl of soup. His expression was careful, eyes giving nothing away. The boss said you should eat, he muttered. Where is he? Downstairs, meetings. He set the tray on the table. For a man built like a wall, his hands moved with surprising care. Alina thanked him. When he left, she ate slowly, savoring every bite. Each spoonful felt unreal. Too warm, too kind, too undeserved. Downstairs, Lucian De Rossi stood by the tall windows of his office. The rain had cleared overnight, leaving the streets slick and shining. He could see the reflection of the sea on the glass towers beyond. Merrick entered without knocking. She's awake, he said. Lucian nodded, not turning. And? Quiet. Eats like she hasn't in days. Lucian's jaw tightened. She hasn't? Marek hesitated. You sure you want to keep her here? People are asking questions. The men talk. Lucian faced him then, eyes calm but sharp. Let them talk. She's bad for business. She's good for something else, Lucian said, reminding me that we still live among the people we break. Marek exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. You're changing, boss. That scares them. Good, Lucian said quietly. Maybe they should be scared. He turned back to the window, watching the fishing boats drift out toward the open water. Something about the morning light on the waves made him think of a night 20 years ago. An ambulance. A girl in a hospital bed who never woke up. He'd built an empire to forget that memory. And somehow, one crippled girl had dragged it back from the dark. When Alina finally ventured downstairs, the house smelled of espresso and lemon polish. She moved carefully along the marble hallway, every step echoing. The men who passed her looked away. Not unkindly, just uncertain, like she was something they didn't know how to classify. Lucian was at the far end, seated at a table scattered with papers. When he saw her, he rose. You're up. Yes, she said. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding. He gestured toward the chair opposite. Sit, she did, her brace squeaking faintly. He poured her a cup of coffee, black and strong. How's the leg? Better. Whoever fixed the brace? Thank you. He gave a small nod. You should see a doctor. A real one. I can't afford... I didn't ask what you can afford, he interrupted. I asked if you'd see one. She stared at him, trying to read his face. There was no threat in his tone, only command. Okay, she said finally. For a while they drank in silence. The clock ticked. The sound of distant traffic drifted through the open balcony door. Then she asked, "Why are you helping me?" Lucian didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed on the horizon beyond the harbor. "You said something last night. About the car, the accident." She nodded slowly. He turned to her, voice low. "I think I know who was driving." Her fingers tightened around the cup. "Who?" He looked down, jaw locked. "Someone who worked for me. I didn't know until now." Her pulse quickened. "And you covered it up?" "No," he said. "But I didn't ask questions I should have asked." The silence between them thickened. She could hear the faint hum of a refrigerator somewhere behind the wall, the drip of condensation from the air vent. "So what happens now?" she whispered. Lucian exhaled. "Now I make it right." That afternoon, a black car waited outside the house. The driver held the door open. Lucian guided her down the steps slowly, steadying her arm. The city beyond smelled of sea and motor oil, sun glinting on the water. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the clinic," he said. "My doctor will see you." The ride was silent except for the sound of tires on wet asphalt. Alina watched the city roll past, fishermen mending nets, children chasing pigeons, old women hanging laundry from balconies. It was the same world she'd lived in all along. Yet from the back seat of that car, it looked impossibly distant. Lucian glanced sideways once. "You don't have to be afraid." "I'm not," she said quietly. "I just don't understand you." His lips twitched into a shadow of a smile. "Most people don't." When they reached the clinic, the nurse at reception froze. Everyone knew who Lucian De Rossi was, and everyone knew not to ask questions. Within minutes, Alina was in a private room, a specialist examining her leg. Lucian stayed in the hallway, arms folded, watching through the glass. The sterile white lights reflected off the polished floor, cold and unforgiving. Merrick joined him. "This isn't mercy, boss. It's penance." Lucian didn't reply. Inside, the doctor spoke softly to Alina, pointing at scans, explaining the damage. "With surgery," he said, "you might walk properly again." Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't planned to cry. When she looked toward the window, Lucian was still there, unmoving, unreadable. But for the first time, she didn't see danger in his face. She saw something else. Guilt. Maybe even hope. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and ocean wind. Beyond the glass wall, the sea glimmered like a sheet of mercury under the noon sun. Lucian stood at the reception desk, signing papers while the doctor's voice droned somewhere in the background. 2 reconstructive procedures, the doctor said, tapping the chart. Physical therapy for at least 6 months. It won't be easy, but she's young, and her body can still recover. Lucian nodded once. "Do it," the doctor hesitated. "The cost will be significant, Mr. De Rossi." Lucian's expression didn't change. "Bill it to me." When the man left, Lucian remained there, staring at the form under his hand. Total estimate, $72,000. For him, it was nothing. For her, it would have been a lifetime of debt. He folded the papers neatly and tucked them into his coat pocket. Inside the exam room, Alina sat on the bed, her leg propped up on a pillow. She looked small beneath the sterile lights, her violinist's hands clasped in her lap. Lucian stepped in quietly. "The surgery's scheduled," he said. Her eyes widened. "You already? You didn't have to." "I did. But I can't repay you." "I didn't ask you to," he interrupted. Her throat worked as she searched for words. "Why?" Lucian paused by the window. Outside, waves slapped against the breakwater. "When I was younger," he said, "I believed power could erase guilt. That if I built enough walls, I'd stop hearing the voices of the people I hurt getting there." He turned to her. "But guilt doesn't fade. It waits." The words hung between them, soft but heavy. Alina stared at him, unsure if she was seeing a confession or a warning. "You're not like they say," she whispered. Lucian smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm exactly like they say, just older." When they left the clinic, the sun had started to sink. The city glowed in soft amber light, the streets alive with evening traffic. Merrick was waiting by the car. His jaw tightened when he saw the discharge papers in Lucian's hand. "You went through with it," he said flatly. Lucian nodded. Merrick lowered his voice. "Boss, this girl, she's turning you into something dangerous. Soft." Lucian looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "Maybe dangerous is what I already was." They drove in silence through the winding roads that led up to Lucian's villa. Alina watched the world pass, fishermen hauling their nets, children running through puddles, a woman locking up her bakery for the night. It all felt far away, like a memory she was afraid to touch. That evening, she stood on the balcony overlooking the harbor. The air was cool, faintly salted. Below, the lights of Dubrovnik shimmered like 1,000 small fires. Lucian joined her, a cup of espresso in his hand. "How's the leg?" "It hurts," she said truthfully. "But it's a good kind of hurt." He nodded. "Pain means it's still alive." She turned to him, studying the lines on his face. There was something almost human beneath the armor. Exhaustion, yes, but also... "Remorse, do you ever sleep?" she asked. He huffed a laugh. "Rarely. What keeps you awake?" He leaned on the railing, eyes fixed on the dark sea. "Memories of the people I used to be, and the ones I can't forget." She hesitated before saying, "You don't have to carry them alone." Lucian looked at her sharply, then softened. "That's not how this world works, Alina. Every man carries what he earns." Later, when the villa went quiet, Lucian entered his office. The lamp cast a small pool of light across his desk. He unlocked the drawer and took out an old photograph, his sister, Chiara. She was 17 in the picture, standing by the same harbor, a violin in her hand. He hadn't looked at it in years. The resemblance to Alina was uncanny. He poured himself a drink and stared at the image until it blurred. When Merrick entered without knocking, Lucian didn't look up. "She reminds you of her, doesn't she?" Lucian's jaw tightened. "Leave it alone." Merrick stepped closer. "You're risking everything. The men are restless. They think you're slipping." Lucian turned his chair slowly, eyes cold again. "Maybe I am, but if helping one broken girl makes them doubt my strength, then they were never loyal. Just afraid." Merrick didn't answer. Lucian gestured toward the door. "Keep her safe. No one touches her. Not even by mistake." Merrick nodded reluctantly and left. Hours later, Alina couldn't sleep. The pain in her leg throbbed with every heartbeat. She wandered into the hall, drawn by faint music. Lucian was still in his office, the door half open. A small record player spun an old Italian tune, "E più ti penso." He sat there, eyes closed, listening. Alina watched quietly for a moment, the soft music filling the silence between them. Then she spoke. "It's beautiful." He opened his eyes. "Chiara used to play it. Your sister?" He nodded once. "She died young. Wrong place, wrong time." Alina stepped closer, the floor cold beneath her bare feet. "Is that why you helped me?" Lucian looked at her, and for the first time there was no guard in his expression. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I just wanted to believe redemption still exists." The clock ticked softly. Outside, the sea whispered against the rocks. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Alina said quietly, "Then keep your promise. Not just to me, to yourself." Lucian's eyes flickered with something almost like pain. "Careful, Alina. You talk like someone who thinks I can still be saved." She met his gaze steadily. "I think you already started to be." The city didn't sleep easily under rain. By the second night, the storm had returned, washing neon reflections across the harbor. Inside Club Nero, Lucian's men gathered in the back corridor where smoke curled thick as fog. "Boss is losing his edge," one of them muttered. "Since when does a beggar sleep under his roof?" "Since she cried," another sneered. "He's gone sentimental." Merrick leaned against the wall, silent. He didn't join the laughter. He only watched, expression unreadable, until their voices dropped into the hush of guilt that always came when his gaze lingered too long. "Get back to work," he said finally. The tone left no room for argument. When the corridor emptied, he lit a cigarette, stared at the glowing tip, and muttered, "You'd better know what you're doing." Lucian. Upstairs, Alina sat in the lounge, her brace glinting dully in the lamplight. The storm outside cast ripples across the floor. She was reading a newspaper someone had left behind. Headlines about missing dock workers and raids in the North Harbor filled the page. Lucian entered quietly. He'd shed the tailored jacket. His shirt sleeves were rolled, veins visible along his forearms. For the first time, she saw how tired he looked. "You're awake late," he said. "Couldn't sleep," she admitted. The thunder. He poured himself a drink, amber swirling in the glass. "You'll get used to it. The city never really sleeps. It just pretends." Alina folded the paper. "They talk about you in here," she said carefully. He arched an eyebrow. "Do they?" "Not by name, but I know who they mean. The man who owns everything but peace." Lucian smirked faintly. "They make me sound poetic." She held his gaze. "They make you sound dangerous." He didn't deny it. Both can be true. Down in the docks, another car arrived. Black, engine low and smooth. The man who stepped out wore a long coat and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Radu Petrescu, old rival. He'd heard rumors. Lucian De Rossi, the untouchable, had gone soft. And Radu had built a life waiting for cracks in other men's armor. "Find me someone inside," he told his driver. "Someone who still remembers what loyalty costs." By dawn, whispers had already reached Club Nero. Lucian woke early. The sea outside the villa was slate gray, waves breaking hard against the rocks. He found Alina in the kitchen, balancing on her good leg as she tried to pour coffee. "Careful," he said. "I can manage." He watched her struggle for a moment before stepping forward to steady the cup. Their hands brushed. She froze. "Thank you," she whispered. He looked down at her, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. "You shouldn't have to thank me for that." She gave a small, tired smile. "Then for the first time I won't." Lucian almost laughed. Almost. "You're bold for someone half-broken." "I'm not broken," she said. "Just delayed." The answer caught him off guard. He stared at her a second longer, then turned toward the window. "The doctor will call today. We'll start therapy next week." Alina hesitated. "You're sure you can trust him?" "People know who you are." Lucian's shoulders tensed. "They know who I was." That afternoon, Merrick entered the study. His tone was tight. "Radu's men are sniffing around again. They say you've gone soft." Lucian didn't look up from his papers. "Let them talk. Talk becomes action." Lucian closed the folder. "If they want war, they'll find I haven't forgotten how to fight. But this time, Merrick, it's on my terms." Merrick frowned. "And the girl?" "She stays under protection. Anyone touches her dies." The words were simple fact, no heat behind them. That scared Merrick more than shouting ever could. Evening fell hard. Thunder rolled over the bay, shaking the shutters. Alina sat near the window, her violin resting on her knee. She hadn't played in months. Lucian entered quietly. "You play?" "I used to. Play now," she hesitated. "It's not good anymore." "Then it will be honest," he said. She drew the bow slowly across the strings. The first note wavered, fragile as breath. Then another followed, clearer, fuller. The melody rose and fell like rain against glass, imperfect, trembling, alive. Lucian stood in the doorway, listening. For a few minutes, the house forgot who he was. The air softened. Even the guards outside stopped whispering. When the song ended, she looked up, embarrassed. "Sorry, I'm out of practice." He shook his head. "No, you reminded this place it's still human." Her cheeks flushed. "And you?" He smiled faintly. "Work in progress." But outside, beneath the hum of the city, a different rhythm began to build, whispers traveling through alleys and taverns. A man like Lucian showing mercy was blood in the water. Radu listened to the reports with quiet amusement. "A crippled girl changed him?" he said. "Then she'll unmake him." He poured himself a drink, eyes glittering. "Find her." That night, Lucian couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony, cigarette burning between his fingers, the rain sliding off the stone balustrade. Marek's warnings replayed in his head. He thought about Alina, the way she'd looked when she played, the way her voice steadied even when she shook. The memory unsettled him more than any threat ever had. Downstairs, the front gate creaked. A shadow moved near the wall. Lucian's hand went instinctively to the pistol under his coat. He moved silently through the hall, past the dim lamps to the door. The rain masked his steps. Outside, the air smelled of iron and storm. He saw the figure clearly now, one of his own men, bleeding, staggering toward the steps. Boss, the man collapsed, coughing blood. They found her at the clinic. Lucian's world narrowed to the pounding of his pulse. Who? Radu's men. They're coming. The man went still. Lucian looked up at the dark horizon, at the faint red flash of lightning far over the water. For the first time in years, he felt fear, not for himself, but for someone else. He turned toward the stairs and called, his voice low but sharp, "Marek." The call came just after midnight. Lucian had barely reached the top of the stairs when Marek appeared from the corridor, pistol drawn, eyes hard. "They hit the clinic," Marek said. "2 guards down. Doctor's missing." Lucian's pulse steadied into that old, dangerous rhythm he'd sworn to forget. And the girl? They took her. The words landed like a blade in his chest. The thunder outside swallowed his answer, but Marek didn't need to hear it. He saw it in the way Lucian's jaw locked, in the quiet shift of his shoulders as he holstered the pistol and started for the door. "Get the cars," Lucian said. No lights, no sirens. The rain had turned the streets into mirrors. Tires hissed across puddles as 3 black sedans slipped through the old quarter toward the industrial edge of the harbor. Lucian rode in the front seat, eyes fixed on the horizon where lightning pulsed over the sea. Marek's phone buzzed once. He listened, then said, "Warehouse 47, the old cannery." Lucian nodded. He knew it well. A rust-rotted relic his men had once used for shipments that never appeared on paper. 5 men minimum, Marek continued. Radu's signature. Lucian checked the magazine of his gun, chambered around, and said nothing. At the cannery, the smell of salt and oil clung to the air. Waves slammed against the concrete pylons below. Inside, yellow floodlights flickered through the broken windows. Lucian's men spread out soundlessly, black shadows against darker walls. From somewhere inside came a muffled cry, small, desperate. Lucian signaled once. 2 guards slipped through the side door. Another covered the back. He moved forward alone, boots whispering over wet cement. The cry came again. He found her near the loading platform, bound to a chair, her violin lying shattered on the floor. One man stood behind her, another near the stairs, phone to his ear. "Tell him we've got her," the man said. "He'll come running." Lucian stepped from the shadows and fired twice. Both men fell before they could turn. The sound echoed like thunder inside the hollow space. "Alina," he said quietly, crossing the floor. Her eyes fluttered open. "Lucian?" He cut the ropes with a knife, pulled her up. She tried to stand, but her leg buckled. He caught her against his chest. "You came," she whispered. "Always." A shout rang out from the far door. Radu's men flooding in, rifles raised. Marek's voice crackled over the radio. "We're inside! 30 seconds!" Lucian dragged her behind a stack of crates just as gunfire ripped through the room. Splinters exploded from the wood. He returned fire in calm, measured bursts, each shot deliberate, precise. Smoke filled the air, mixing with dust and the bitter smell of gunpowder. "Stay down," he said, reloading. She gripped his sleeve. "You'll get killed." He glanced at her, eyes cold. "Then at least for something that matters." When Marek's team burst through the side door, chaos followed. The fight was short and brutal. Steel on concrete, the crack of bone, the ring of shell casings bouncing. Lucian moved like he'd done this his whole life, which he had. The part of him that had slept under layers of guilt came awake with terrifying precision. When the last man fell, the silence was deafening. Rain leaked through the roof, hissing on the hot barrels of the guns. Lucian lowered his weapon. His hands shook only once when he turned back to her. "It's over," he said. But it wasn't. From the catwalk above, Radu stepped out of the shadows, pistol in hand, smile wide and thin. "I always knew you'd trade blood for conscience," he said. And look where it led you. Lucian's aim came up instantly, but Radu had already cocked the hammer. Drop it, he ordered. Lucian didn't move. You won't shoot me, Radu said. You need to prove you're better than me now, remember? Lucian's finger tightened on the trigger. No, he said softly. I just need to stop you. The gunfire cracked once, twice. Radu stumbled back, eyes wide, the railing behind him giving way. He fell into the dark below, the sound swallowed by the sea. For a moment there was only the rain. Lucian lowered the pistol, chest rising and falling. Marek appeared from the smoke, blood on his sleeve. You all right? Lucian nodded. Get the cars. We're leaving. He bent and lifted Alina, cradling her carefully. She was half-conscious, whispering something he couldn't hear over the storm. Outside, the air hit them cold and wet. Lightning split the sky, painting the harbor silver. Lucian carried her into the car, voice low. Drive, Marek floored the accelerator. The cannery disappeared behind them, swallowed by the rain. By the time they reached the villa, dawn was bleeding into the clouds. The doctor waited, summoned hours ago. Lucian laid her on the couch, blood seeping through the torn bandages. Her hand caught his wrist weakly. Don't leave. I'm here, he said. Her eyelids fluttered, her voice barely a whisper. You promised. He brushed a wet strand of hair from her face. I keep my promises. Her hand loosened, sleep claiming her. Lucian stood there long after the doctor took over, his own hands still shaking. He'd killed again, saved again, and somewhere between those two truths, something inside him had shifted for good. Hours later, when Marek returned, Lucian was still by her bedside. She'll live, the doctor said, but she needs rest. Marek poured himself a drink and muttered, Radu's gone. His crew scattered. It's over. Lucian stared at the sleeping girl. Nothing's over. Not until I rebuild this the right way. Marek studied him for a moment. In what way is that? Lucian exhaled slowly. One where people like her don't end up in our alleys. Marek almost smiled. You sound like a man who wants to be forgiven. Lucian looked out the window at the rising light. Maybe I just want to be worth the saving she thinks I am. Morning broke pale over Dubrovnik. The rain had stopped, but the city felt washed raw. From the villa's balcony, the harbor shimmered with a dull, pewter light. Lucian hadn't moved in hours. Downstairs, the hum of the espresso machine and the muffled voices of guards mixed with the quiet pulse of his own thoughts. Inside the guest room, Alina slept beneath clean sheets, her face colorless but calm. The doctor's instruments lay in a neat line beside her bed. Sterile gauze, a half-empty syringe, a pair of scissors catching the sunlight. Lucian reached to adjust the blanket. The girl stirred, whispering something he couldn't make out. He drew back. The guilt he'd lived with for years now sat on his chest like weight. Every sound in the house seemed too loud. The creak of the floorboards, the faint murmur of men outside, who didn't yet know what kind of man they worked for anymore. Downstairs, Marek waited by the table, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, he said quietly. 2 dead, maybe 3. Radu's body hasn't surfaced yet. When he hung up, he looked at Lucian. Harbor police are asking questions. They know someone dumped a body off Pier 12. Lucian poured black coffee into a cup that rattled slightly in his hand. They won't find it. That's not the point. Marek leaned forward. They're looking at you. You disappear from the club. A rival vanishes. Your men are limping back with bullet wounds. You've been careful for 20 years, and now you're leaving footprints the size of graves. Lucian took a slow sip. Maybe I'm done hiding. Marek slammed a palm on the table. Then what? You think saving one girl buys you redemption? You think it brings Chiara back? The name landed between them like a strike. Lucian's eyes lifted, sharp and dangerous. Watch your mouth. Silence stretched, long enough for the clock to tick 3 full beats. Then Lucian stood, his voice quieter. I can't change what I've done, but I can change what comes after. Marek looked away. You'll lose everything. Lucian's reply was almost a whisper. Then maybe it's finally a fair trade. By noon, the police had reached the club. Inspectors moved through the kitchen, notebooks in hand, their questions sharp but polite. Lucian stood at the bar, unarmed, answering each one with disarming calm. Mr. De Rossi, were you at the docks last night? I was home. Anyone who can confirm that? My staff. He gave them nothing, only half-truths wrapped in civility. When they left, Merrick exhaled through his teeth. They'll be back. Lucian nodded. Then I'll be ready. At dusk, Alina woke again. The room glowed with amber light, dust motes swirling in it. She saw Lucian sitting nearby, head bowed, eyes lost in something far away. You look like you haven't slept, she murmured. He looked up, a faint, tired smile touching his mouth. Neither have you. Where's Merrick? Handling business. His tone softened. How do you feel? Alive, she hesitated. Did you find them? He didn't answer. That was enough. She turned her face toward the window. You didn't have to kill for me. His jaw tightened. That's where you're wrong. I had to. You think violence fixes what violence broke? Lucian rubbed a hand across his face. No, but sometimes it stops the bleeding long enough to find another way. For a while, neither spoke. The smell of salt drifted in from the sea. Finally, she said, Then promise me one thing. What? That this ends here. No more bodies because of me. He met her gaze. If anyone touches you again, Alina, I can't promise that. Her eyes filled, but she held his stare. Then you'll never be free. That night, Lucian stood in his office with the ledger open in front of him, the one that kept his empire alive. Every shipment, every payoff, every lie. He took a match from the drawer, struck it, and watched the flame catch the first page. The fire crawled across the paper, orange against the darkness. Smoke curled up like the ghost of everything he'd built. Merrick burst in. What are you doing? Ending it. Burning evidence doesn't free you, Lucian. It just leaves ash. Lucian stared into the flames. Ash is better than blood. The book crumbled. Marek swore under his breath and turned away. Near midnight, the villa was quiet again. Alina stood on the balcony, wrapped in one of Lucian's coats, the brace glinting in the moonlight. She heard his footsteps before she saw him. You're supposed to be resting, he said. I've rested enough. She looked out at the harbor lights. Do you ever think about leaving this place? Every day. And? He shrugged. The city doesn't let go easily, she faced him. Maybe it's not the city holding you. He almost smiled. You think you know me already. I think I see who you could be. The breeze lifted her hair. The scent of rain lingered in the air. He watched her for a long moment, then said quietly, Tomorrow I'll move you somewhere safe. After that, we'll see. Safe from who? From the world I made. When he left her there, she leaned on the railing, the night pressing soft against her skin. Somewhere far below, waves hit stone in a slow rhythm like a heartbeat. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe she might have a future. And inside the house, Lucian sat alone, the burned ledger still smoking in the sink. The scent of paper and fire filled the room, clinging to his clothes. He whispered to no one. Tomorrow, it changes. The morning came heavy, the kind that carried too much silence. The villa smelled faintly of smoke and salt. Downstairs, men whispered in the hallway, hushed, uneasy. They'd seen the fire in the office last night. They knew their world was shifting, and none of them liked it. Lucian stepped into the corridor, sleeves rolled up, tie gone. His eyes were red but steady. Where's Merrick? He asked. In the garage, boss, one of the guards replied. Lucian nodded. Get the car ready. We're going to the docks. The guard hesitated. The docks? After last night? Lucian's stare killed the question. You heard me. Merrick was checking the SUV, a cigarette hanging loose from his mouth. When Lucian approached, he didn't look up. You're serious about this? Merrick asked. Lucian leaned against the car. Every account, every shell company. Shut them down. Tell the accountants to disappear. That's suicide, Merrick said flatly. You pull the money out, half the city comes for you. Lucian's voice was low. Then they can come. Merrick laughed without humor. You're not saving her anymore, Lucian. You're trying to save yourself. And this, he gestured at the car, the world, the sea beyond it, isn't how men like us get saved. Lucian looked at him. Maybe I stopped being a man like us. For a long second, Merrick just studied him, his oldest friend, the man who had built empires out of fear. Then he crushed the cigarette under his boot. Fine, Merrick said. But when this falls apart, don't expect me to pick up the pieces. Lucian's answer was simple. You already have. The drive through the industrial district was quiet. The warehouses loomed like ghosts. Lucian watched the skyline blur by. The gray cranes, the rusting ships, the smell of oil and rain. He'd built his kingdom here. Now he was dismantling it, one lie at a time. When they reached the docks, 2 men were waiting, brokers, old allies turned vultures. They straightened when Lucian stepped out of the car. Mr. De Rossi, one said. We heard rumors. Is it true you're selling your shares? Lucian's gaze didn't waver. All of them. The men exchanged looks. That's unexpected. Then don't expect it, Lucian said. Just take the offer. They nodded quickly. In their world, hesitation could kill faster than bullets. Back at the villa, Alina was sitting on the balcony, sketching the view in a worn notebook she'd found in the study. The bandages on her arm were clean. Her color had returned a little. But her eyes, there was a distance there, the kind that came from seeing too much. When Lucian entered, she looked up. You went out again. He hung his coat on the chair. Business. You say that like it explains everything. It used to, he said quietly. Now it doesn't. She tilted her head. Then why keep doing it? He didn't answer. Instead, he sat across from her and glanced at the notebook. The drawing was rough but full of life. The sea, the rooftops, the faint trace of gulls. He almost smiled. You draw, he said. I used to paint, she replied, before my mother got sick. Before the rent collectors came, Lucian nodded slowly. I remember collectors like that. You were one of them, she said softly. He didn't deny it. Later that night, Marek returned with a look Lucian hadn't seen in years. Fear. You need to see this, he said, throwing a folded newspaper on the desk. The headline read, Police investigate alleged mafia power shift. Internal war feared. Lucian scanned the text, jaw tightening. The article mentioned his name once, carefully hidden behind euphemisms. A long-standing figure in the Southern trade. But the message was clear. Someone had talked. Who leaked this? Lucian asked. Could be anyone, Merrick said. Half the lieutenants are restless. You cut off the money, they panic. Lucian's voice went cold. Then we find out who. By dawn, it was clear who it was. One of the mid-level men, Enzo Varga, loyal for years, until loyalty stopped paying. They found him hiding in the back of a shuttered nightclub. Marek's men dragged him into the courtyard, rain dripping from his hair. Lucian watched, silent. Please, Enzo gasped. I didn't mean to. I just needed... Lucian raised a hand, and the pleading stopped. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. You sold names to the police. You risked everything we built. I had no choice, Enzo said. You're tearing it all down. I have a family. Lucian stared at him for a long time, the word family twisting somewhere deep inside him. Then, without looking at Marek, he said, Let him go. Marek blinked. What? I said let him go. Enzo's breath hitched in disbelief. You mean... Lucian turned away. Get out of the city by morning. If I see you again, I won't be so generous. Enzo nodded rapidly, stumbling away. When he was gone, Marek stepped forward. You're making mistakes, Lucian. Big ones. Lucian's voice was flat. I've made worse. That night, the power went out across half the compound. Lucian knew what it meant before Marek burst through the door. Inside job, Marek said. They're coming. Our own men. Lucian stood slowly, holstering his gun. Then we end it. Outside, lightning split the sky again, flashing over the bay. Shadows moved between the trees. His former soldiers, his creation, coming home to devour him. He turned to Marek. Get her out. Marek shook his head. Not without you, Lucian's voice was calm. You owe me nothing, but you owe her a chance. Then he was gone, moving down the hall toward the main doors where the darkness waited. Inside, the old house came alive with echoes, footsteps, whispers. the metallic click of rifles being loaded. Lucian stood in the foyer, hand steady on his pistol, the rain dripping from his coat. He could hear them closing in. His empire had come full circle. Now it was time to decide what kind of man would walk out of the fire. He smiled faintly to himself, something cold and final in his eyes. Let's finish this. The first shot cracked through the villa windows just after 2 a.m. Glass exploded across the marble floor, scattering light like broken stars. Lucian dropped instantly behind the doorway, hand already on his pistol. "Merrick!" he shouted. No answer. Only the thud of boots in the courtyard and the stutter of automatic fire. Outside, rain lashed the olive trees. Lightning revealed shadows climbing the outer wall. Men he'd once paid, men who knew every entry point. Betrayal always came dressed as familiarity. He moved through the hall low and fast, counting sounds. 3 near the east balcony, 2 by the service door, 1 heavy set of steps on the stairs, close. He turned the corner and fired once. The body hit the wall, slid down silently. The smell of cordite thickened the air. Upstairs, Alina woke to chaos, shouts, gunfire, the taste of dust. She tried to sit up, pain lancing through her leg. Marek burst into the room, face streaked with blood and rain. "Come on," he said, pulling the blanket aside. "We've got to move. What's happening?" "Mutiny." Half the crew turned. "Lucian's buying us time." He hoisted her up, ignoring her protests, and slung her arm over his shoulder. "There's a back exit through the wine cellar. Keep your head down." They moved fast down the narrow stairs, the sound of gunfire echoing through the stone. Alina's heart hammered, her breath shallow. The smell of damp earth and spilled wine filled the passage. "Where is he?" she gasped. "Doing what he always does," Merrick said grimly. "Fighting alone." Lucian crouched behind the overturned table in the main hall, reloading by feel. The chandelier above swayed, its crystals tinkling faintly like a memory of elegance long gone. 2 men burst in through the patio doors. Lucian fired once, twice. Both dropped. He ducked as bullets tore through the walls behind him. His ears rang. Somewhere above, plaster rained down from the ceiling. He heard footsteps, fast, light, and then a voice he recognized. "Boss!" Marek from the stairwell. Lucian spun, relief cutting through the adrenaline. "She's safe?" "Headed for the cellar." Lucian nodded. "Good. Then we hold here." They fell into rhythm like old soldiers, one covering, one firing, shifting positions by instinct. The air stank of smoke and rain. Every flash of lightning outside threw the room into violent motion. Walls, shadows, faces half seen. Why are they doing this? Marek shouted over the noise. Lucian answered without looking. "Because I told them I was done. And they believed me." The fight dragged into minutes that felt like hours. The front door finally gave under a shoulder slam and 6 men poured through. Marek emptied a clip, dropped behind a pillar, reloaded. Lucian felt the burn of a bullet graze along his arm. He ignored it. Pain was old language. His body understood it fluently. He threw a smoke grenade toward the foyer. The explosion filled the air with a thick gray veil. He and Merrick slipped through it, flanking the attackers from the side. When the smoke cleared, 5 more bodies lay still. Only the storm kept talking. Down in the cellar, Alina and one of the house guards reached the outer tunnel that led toward the cliffs. The passage smelled of salt and rot, the stones slick underfoot. She limped forward, clutching the guard's sleeve. Above, muffled gunfire echoed like thunder underwater. "Keep moving," the guard said. "Once we reach the rocks, there's a path down to the boats." But before they reached the exit, a new shadow filled the tunnel mouth. A tall man, rifle raised. Not one of Lucian's. The guard shoved Alina aside and fired. The echo deafened her. The stranger fell, but not before his shot hit the guard square in the chest. He dropped wordlessly, eyes wide. Alina crawled to him, blood already pooling beneath his back. No, stay with me." He smiled faintly. "Go, tell him." The words faded before he finished. Hands shaking, she took his pistol, stood, and limped into the rain-soaked night. Inside, Lucian and Marek were cornered near the dining room, bullets shredding the doorway. Marek reloaded with a growl. We're running out of rounds. Lucian checked his own magazine. Half left. Then we make them count. The next volley came fast. Marek leaned out, fired, ducked back. Too late. A shot caught him in the side. He fell against the wall, breath ragged. Lucian dragged him behind the counter, pressing a hand over the wound. Blood seeped through his fingers. Stay with me, Lucian ordered. Marek's laugh was a rasp. Told you it'd end like this. Not tonight. But even as he said it, Lucian saw the color draining from his friend's face. Marek. Go, Marek whispered. She's still out there. Don't waste it! Another burst of gunfire tore through the room. Lucian grabbed his weapon, rage coiling in his gut, and stood. He walked into the open, firing without hesitation. Every shot found its mark. Years of violence guided his hands like muscle memory. By the time the magazine clicked empty, the last man had fallen. The house was silent again, except for the storm. Lucian turned back to Marek. Too late. He knelt beside him, fingers brushing the still warm hand. You stubborn bastard, he murmured. For a long time he stayed there, rain dripping from the shattered roof above. Then he stood, holstered the pistol, and started toward the cellar. Outside, near the cliffs, lightning revealed Alina struggling along the path, waves crashing below. She turned at the sound of boots on stone. Lucian emerged from the tunnel, bloodied, limping slightly, eyes blazing. When he saw her, relief flickered, quickly buried under exhaustion. You're hurt, she said. So are you. They both half laughed, half sobbed, the sound of two people who'd run out of fear. He reached her side, steadying her as the wind howled. It's over, he said, though neither believed it. Behind them, the villa burned. The flames spread fast, painting the rain gold. Everything he'd built, his empire, his name, went up in fire and smoke. Alina watched, trembling. What happens now? Lucian looked at the blaze one last time. Now, he said, we start over. The wind carried the smell of salt and ash down the cliffs. Somewhere far below, the sirens began to wail. Lucian didn't look back. He took her hand, and together they disappeared into the darkness beyond the road. The villa burned through the night, its glow staining the horizon long after Lucian and Alina vanished into the hills. By dawn, the fire was a skeleton of embers, and the city below was already whispering, the fall of the De Rossi Empire, the ghost of a king gone missing. Lucian drove an old black Alfa along a narrow coastal road that twisted through pine and rock. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and metallic. Alina sat beside him, wrapped in his coat, eyes closed, the exhaustion finally dragging her under. Every mile they put between them and the villa felt both like freedom and loss. He'd left everything behind, the money, the men, even Marek's grave. Only the pistol on the seat beside him remained, and he wasn't sure if that made him safer or cursed. The road narrowed. A faded sign read, St. Venera, 3 km. Lucian slowed the car. The village was small. Fishermen, a church, one market, and a cafe that still used coal stoves. The kind of place where people minded their own ghosts. He pulled up near a boarded guest house and killed the engine. Where are we? Alina asked sleepily. Somewhere they won't look, he said. Inside, the guest house smelled of dust and salt. The owner, an old woman with eyes sharp as glass, didn't ask questions. She handed over a key and nodded toward the upstairs rooms. Cash only, she said. Lucian dropped a bundle of euros on the counter. We were never here. She pocketed the money without blinking. You weren't. In the small room upstairs, the walls were cracked, and the curtains barely clung to the rods. But there was warmth from the old iron heater, and that was enough. Lucian helped Alina to the bed. She winced, but said nothing. You need rest, he said. I need answers, she murmured. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing a hand across his face. What kind? You said we'd start over. What does that mean? Lucian's gaze drifted to the window, to the gray sea beyond. It means I stop pretending redemption is something a man can buy. She studied him quietly. And if it's something you have to earn? He gave a faint, humorless smile. Then I've got a long road ahead. That night, Lucian dreamt of the fire. Not the villa, but older fires. A warehouse in Naples, a man screaming, Merrick's voice shouting his name through smoke. He woke in the dark, sweat cold on his back. Alina stirred. "Lucian? Go back to sleep," he said. But she sat up anyway, watching him. "You still hear it, don't you?" He didn't answer. She reached out, her hand brushing his. "You can't fight ghosts with bullets." "I don't fight them," he said softly. "I just try to keep them quiet." Morning came with fog thick enough to erase the sea. Lucian walked to the cafe, hood up, eyes scanning the street out of habit. He bought coffee and a loaf of bread, paid in cash, and left before anyone could ask who he was. When he returned, Alina was sitting at the table drawing again. The cliffs, the smoke, the endless gray horizon. "You draw the world like it's still worth saving," he said. "Maybe it is," she replied. "You just have to look from the right angle." He smiled slightly. "You sound like Merrick. Was he the one who saved you?" she asked. Lucian paused. "No, he was the one who tried." By afternoon, the peace broke. 2 black sedans appeared at the far end of the road. Lucian saw them first from the window. Dark glass, no plates. Old instincts flared awake instantly. He turned to Alina. "Pack your things, now." Her pencil froze. "What's wrong?" "They found us." He grabbed his gun, checked the clip. Alina stuffed the sketches and a few clothes into a satchel. They moved fast, out the back door, down the narrow alley that led to the old churchyard. Behind them, engines cut, doors slammed. Voices shouted in the distance, men spreading out. Lucian led her through the fog, toward the cliffs beyond the cemetery. The sound of the sea grew louder with every step. "How long can we keep running?" she whispered. "As long as it takes." And then, Lucian didn't look back. "Then we stop running." At the edge of the cliff stood an abandoned chapel, its roof half collapsed, ivy crawling over the stones. Lucian led her inside. The air smelled of salt and dust and forgotten prayers. He crouched near the doorway, listening. The men were close now, boots crunching gravel, the distant hum of radios. "Lucian," Alina said quietly. "You can't keep doing this." He looked at her, pale, trembling, yet defiant. "Doing what?" "Saving me like it's the only thing keeping you human." His mouth tightened. "It's the only thing left I know how to do." She stepped closer. "Then learn something else." The words hit harder than gunfire. He looked away, jaw flexing. Outside, a voice echoed through the fog. "Lucian De Rossi, you can't hide forever." Lucian stood slowly, the pistol steady in his hand. "No," he murmured, "but I can finish what I started." He turned to Alina. "Stay here." "Lucian, I said stay." Before she could stop him, he was gone, disappearing into the mist, toward the voices. He moved low through the fog, the cliffs to his right, the scent of seaweed and rust in the air. He could see their outlines now, 6 men, armed, cautious. They expected fear. What they found instead was resolve. Lucian fired first, the sound rolling across the cliffs like thunder. 2 dropped instantly. The rest scrambled for cover, shouting orders that dissolved in the wind. The fight was quick, brutal, over in seconds. When silence returned, Lucian stood alone among the bodies, breathing hard. He lowered the pistol, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. The fog thinned enough to reveal the chapel again. Alina stood in the doorway, eyes wide, face pale. He met her gaze and finally said what he'd never admitted, to her, to Merrick, to himself. "I don't want to be this man anymore." She walked toward him slowly, her limp still visible but her steps steady. "Then don't be." Lucian stared at the gun, then at the sea. Without a word, he threw the weapon into the waves. It vanished with a faint splash, swallowed by the gray water below. For the first time, the silence felt clean. They stood there, side by side, the wind lifting her hair, the world behind them burning itself out. What came next was uncertain. Maybe freedom, maybe ruin. But for once, Lucian wasn't running from either. He looked at her and said softly, Let's go home. 3 days after the cliffs, the headlines broke. Interpol issues warrant for Lucian De Rossi, suspected mafia boss alive. Lucian read the paper from the corner table of a small cafe in Split, the bitter espresso untouched. The photo was grainy, taken years ago, but the name was enough. Every border, every port, every police channel would be watching now. Across from him, Alina tore a croissant into small, nervous pieces. "You can't keep hiding in plain sight," she whispered. "I'm not hiding," Lucian said. "I'm breathing." She looked at him over the rim of her cup. "Breathing doesn't mean living." He folded the paper carefully, slid it under the ashtray. "Then what does?" "Stopping," she said. "Turning yourself in. Ending it before they end you." He almost smiled. "You think prison redeems men like me? I think running kills you slower." By noon, the streets buzzed with heat. The sea shimmered turquoise beyond the promenade, tourists laughing, vendors shouting, as if the world had forgotten violence existed. Lucian and Alina moved through it like ghosts. They rented a single-room flat above a laundromat, paint peeling, pipes clanging whenever someone showered below. Lucian spent hours at the window, watching police cars crawl past, counting how long before one stopped. Each night he dreamt of fire again. Marek's face, the villa collapsing in red light, the sound of his own gun hitting the sea. When he woke, Alina was usually sitting by the window, sketching the dawn. The paper filled with quiet scenes, rooftops, gulls, his hands. Once he asked, "Why draw me?" "Because you don't look like a criminal when you're asleep." 2 weeks passed before the knock came. Not the pounding of hunters, but a polite, deliberate rhythm. Lucian froze. He reached for the pistol he no longer had. The sound came again. Alina opened the door before he could stop her. A man stood there, tall, in a gray coat, the kind police wear when they don't want to look like police. "Lucian De Rossi?" Lucian's silence was answer enough. The man produced an ID, Inspector Nikola Vidic, Organized Crime Division. "You've been hard to find," the inspector said calmly. "Mind if we talk?" Lucian's shoulders relaxed fractionally. "If you came to arrest me, you wouldn't have knocked." "True," Vidic said. "I came for something else." They sat at the small kitchen table. The inspector's eyes drifted around the flat, the stack of sketches, the single suitcase, the half-drunk bottle of brandy. "You could have run farther," Vidic said. "Montenegro, maybe Turkey. Instead, you stop here. Why?" Lucian answered without looking at him. "You don't outrun who you are," Vidic nodded slowly. "Good, because you can't." He slid a file across the table. Inside were photographs. Men in suits, documents stamped in red, accounts frozen, names crossed out. "Your organization's done," Vidic said. "But someone's still moving shipments under your code. Whoever's left is killing civilians. If you want to make things right, you'll tell me who they are." Lucian's jaw tightened. "And in exchange, I keep you breathing long enough to testify." Alina's breath caught. "You'd really trust them?" Lucian stared at the file for a long time, then closed it gently. "Give me 24 hours. Vidic stood. "You've got 12. When he left, the flat felt smaller. The only sound was the slow drip of the sink. Night came thick and windless. Lucian packed the few things they had: cash, a map, a small silver crucifix that had belonged to his mother. Alina watched, pale. "You're leaving." "I'm ending it." "You mean going back?" He met her eyes. "If I don't, they'll keep hunting everyone who ever stood near me. That includes you." Tears glimmered, but she didn't argue. "Then I'm coming." "No." "Lucian." He crossed the room in 2 steps, hands gentle on her shoulders. "You gave me something I didn't deserve, a chance to feel human again. Don't take it back by dying next to me." She swallowed hard. "Where will you go?" "Zadar, the old dockyards. The last men who still use my name will be there." She reached into her sketchbook, tore out a page, and pressed it into his hand, a pencil drawing of him standing by the sea. "So you don't forget what you're fighting for." He folded it carefully, slipped it into his jacket. "I won't." He left before dawn. The streets were empty except for fishermen and stray dogs. The sun broke through the mist in thin gold lines, painting the road ahead like a promise. As the car disappeared beyond the curve, Alina stood at the window, lips moving soundlessly. Not a prayer, but something close. Zadar looked half awake under the dawn. The old port still smelled of diesel and salt, the gulls circling like restless ghosts. Lucian parked the Alpha behind a row of shipping containers and sat for a long minute, hands on the wheel. He could hear the creak of the docks, the distant clang of chains, and beneath it all his own pulse. Steady, deliberate, ready. He stepped out, coat collar turned against the wind. The dockyard had once been his. Every crane, every crate moved under his orders. Now it felt foreign, occupied by strangers using his name like a curse. 2 men waited near the warehouse doors. They straightened when they saw him, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. "Boss?" one ventured. Lucian stopped a few paces away. "You don't call me that anymore." The younger one shifted. "We didn't know if the rumors were true." "They are," Lucian said. "Radu's dead. Marek's gone. The house burned. Whatever's left of this family ends here." The older man hesitated. "If we walk away, someone else fills the space." Lucian's voice dropped. "Then let them. Better men or worse, it doesn't matter. I'm finished." He turned to leave, but a shout cut through the wind. "He's here." A group of men emerged from behind the crates, rifles raised, faces familiar. His own lieutenants. Betrayal again, but colder this time. Their leader stepped forward. Tomas Iliev, a scar down his cheek, one of Marek's old recruits. "You sold us out," Tomas said. "Police, fire all of it. You burned the name." Lucian didn't reach for his gun. "You think this name ever saved you?" "It changed you," Thomas spat on the ground. "We built this for you. And it cost every soul that touched it." The standoff stretched. Then a voice echoed from the far end of the pier. "Put the guns down." Inspector Vidich walked out of the fog, coat billowing, pistol steady. "Nobody wins if we start another war," Thomas snarled. "You brought cops here, boss?" Lucian didn't move. He followed me. Vidich's eyes never left Tomas. "Drop it." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Tomas swung the rifle toward Vidich. Lucian moved first. The shot cracked across the pier. Tomas staggered backward, surprise freezing on his face before he fell. Silence again, broken only by the slap of waves against the pylons. The others hesitated, then lowered their weapons. Lucian exhaled slowly. "Go home," he said. "There's nothing left worth dying for." They scattered into the mist, shadows swallowed by the dawn. Vidich approached, gun lowered. "You didn't have to kill him." Lucian looked at the body. "If I hadn't, you'd be the one bleeding." "That's not justice," Vidich said quietly. "It's mercy," Lucian replied. "For both of us." He turned toward the sea. The horizon was turning gold, waves catching light like shattered glass. Vidich holstered his weapon. "You ready to make it official?" Lucian nodded once. "No more running." The interrogation room in Split smelled of stale coffee and metal. Lucian sat across from Vidich, wrists cuffed loosely, a single recorder between them. Outside the window, rain traced thin lines down the glass. "State your name," Vidich said. "Lucian De Rossi." "Occupation?" Lucian's lips twitched. "Former criminal. Currently unemployed." Vidich almost smiled. "Let's start with the fire." Lucian talked for hours. About the ports, the shipments, the years spent buying silence with blood. He didn't embellish. He didn't excuse. Every word came measured, steady, like laying bricks for his own tomb. When he finished, the tape clicked off. Vidich leaned back. "You realize this confession puts you away for life?" Lucian nodded. "I wasn't planning on vacations." "What about the girl?" Lucian looked up. "She's not part of this." "She'll be questioned." "She didn't know who I was until it was too late," Lucian said. "If you want a witness, you've got me." Vidich studied him for a long time. "You sound like a man who finally believes in consequences." Lucian's voice softened. "I just stopped believing in escape." 3 days later, the headlines changed again. Mafia boss surrenders, testifies against remaining syndicates. The city buzzed with disbelief. Some called him coward, others savior. Lucian read none of it. His world had shrunk to a 6x8 cell, and the echo of the sea beyond the prison walls. Each evening he sat by the barred window, tracing the horizon with his eyes. In the distance he could almost imagine a violin's faint melody, Alina's song carried by memory or wind. One afternoon a guard appeared with an envelope. No return name, only a small sketch inside, the same drawing she'd given him, now redone in ink, him by the sea, but this time the gun was gone. At the bottom, 2 words. You kept your promise. He folded the paper, placed it on the concrete ledge, and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, Lucian De Rossi slept without dreaming of fire. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and rain. Morning light streamed through high windows, soft and cold, glinting off the handcuffs on Lucian's wrists. Rows of journalists filled the benches, their pens ready like weapons. The fall of a king was good business. He sat at the defense table in a plain gray suit, prison-issued, but pressed. His hair had gone silver at the temples. He looked older than his years, like a man who'd already lived too many lifetimes. The prosecutor read the charges: racketeering, extortion, conspiracy, manslaughter. Each word dropped into the silence like a stone into deep water. When she finished, the judge looked down over his glasses. Do you understand the charges, Mr. De Rossi? Lucian nodded once. I do. Do you wish to make a statement before we begin? Lucian's lawyer touched his arm, a warning. But Lucian rose anyway. I do. The room shifted, expectant. He spoke simply, without notes. For 20 years I built something I thought was strength. It wasn't. It was fear wearing an expensive suit. Every coin I made came from someone else's pain. I used loyalty like a chain, friendship like currency. He paused, scanning faces that would never understand, and went on. When it finally broke, I saw what was left. Ash. And a woman who reminded me I used to be human. I don't ask this court for mercy. I ask it to remember the people I hurt before it writes my name in another headline. He sat. The judge watched him for a long moment, then nodded to the clerk. Proceed. The trial lasted weeks. Witnesses came and went. Former lieutenants, accountants, dock workers. Each tried to carve their piece of absolution from his story. Lucian listened without reaction, hands folded, eyes steady. When Alina was called, the room went still. She walked to the stand on her own, the brace gone now, a faint scar visible at her temple. Her voice trembled only once when she took the oath. Miss Petrova, the prosecutor began, you met the defendant under unusual circumstances. Would you describe them? Alina took a breath. I met him the night my mother died. I thought he was a monster. And now? She looked toward Lucian, their eyes meeting briefly. Now I think he's a man who finally stopped being one. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor pressed on. Do you believe he deserves leniency? Alina hesitated. I believe justice matters. But so does change. The judge banged the gavel lightly. That will be enough. As she stepped down, Lucian's eyes followed her. Not pleading, not possessive, just grateful. When the verdict came, the rain had started again, tapping gently on the tall windows. On all counts, the judge said, this court finds the defendant guilty. No one breathed, but in light of his cooperation, testimony, and the lives saved by his confessions, this court also recognizes extraordinary circumstances. Lucian's pulse slowed. He heard every word clearly, though his body felt distant, hollow. 25 years, with possibility of parole in 10. Gasps rose from the press bench. Some shouted that it was too light, others that it was justice. Lucian just bowed his head. For the first time, the sound of chains closing around his wrists didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Prison changed with time. The years passed quietly. He read more than he spoke. He worked in the library, mended books, learned to fix bindings. The other inmates called him Old Man Rossi, half in respect, half in disbelief. Letters came occasionally, from lawyers, journalists, strangers seeking confessions. Most went unanswered. Only one envelope he kept in the drawer beside his bed. Alina's. Her handwriting had changed, steadier now. I opened a small clinic in Zadar. The children draw you in the margins of their notebooks. Not as a criminal, as the man who saved someone. Maybe one day, that's how you'll see yourself too. He never wrote back, but each letter she sent stayed neatly stacked under his pillow, corners worn soft. 10 years to the day after his sentencing, a guard came to his cell. De Rossi, he said. Pack your things. Lucian looked up slowly. Parole? The guard nodded. You earned it. Lucian folded his few belongings, a worn copy of Les Miserables, a rosary, Alina's letters, into a small bag. When he stepped outside the gates, the air smelled of rain and salt. The same sea he'd once ruled over now sounded like forgiveness. No one waited at the gate. He hadn't expected anyone to. He started walking, each step steady, the sky above wide and clean. At dusk, he reached the cliffs beyond Zadar, the same ones where the fire had ended everything. The wind whipped at his coat, the gulls crying overhead. A figure stood by the railing. A woman, hair dark, coat flapping in the wind. She turned when she heard his steps. Alina. For a moment, neither spoke. The years had softened her face, but not her eyes. You're free, she said quietly. He smiled faintly. Freedom's a strange word. Maybe, she said, but you earned it. Lucian looked at the horizon, the sun sinking into the water. The sea's the same. Only I changed. Alina stepped beside him. That's enough. They stood there as the light faded. Two silhouettes against the last gold of the day. Not saints, not sinners, just survivors of a story that had finally run its course. The sea woke before the sun. A low silver light spread across the horizon, touching the rooftops of Zadar, spilling into narrow alleys still slick with rain. Lucian stood on the balcony of a small apartment above the harbor, coffee cooling in his hand. The world below was quiet. Fishermen untangling nets, the hiss of salt air through drying lines, the soft hum of a city that no longer remembered his name. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel watched. No guards, no gunmen, no ghosts waiting in the shadows of memory. Just the steady rhythm of the waves and the whisper of wind through open windows. Alina's voice came from inside. Breakfast will get cold. He turned. She stood at the table, hair loose, wearing an old sweater too big for her. The small apartment smelled of bread and oranges. It wasn't luxury, it was peace. You're up early, he said. I couldn't sleep. He smiled faintly. That used to mean danger. Now it just means I make too much coffee. They ate in comfortable silence. Outside, gulls screamed over the boats, and sunlight broke fully across the water. When she finished, Alina leaned her elbows on the table. The clinic opens at 9. You'll come today? Lucian hesitated. You really think anyone wants an ex-convict around sick children? She met his eyes. They don't see that when they look at you. They see the man who built the new wing last month, who fixed the generator when it failed. He looked down at his hands, calloused, scarred, but steady. You could have left me where I was. I didn't save you, she said. You saved yourself the day you stopped running. He nodded slowly, letting the words sink in like warmth into old bones. By mid-morning, they walked together through the old part of town. Market stalls overflowed with olives, tomatoes, cheap perfumes. The air smelled of seaweed and diesel. People moved past without a second glance, just another couple in an ordinary life. At the clinic, children's laughter spilled through the windows. The place was small, clean, painted the color of sand. Inside, nurses moved with quiet efficiency. Alina guided Lucian to a back room stacked with boxes. Supplies for the outreach trip tomorrow, she said. You'll drive, he grinned. Still giving orders, I see. Someone has to. He helped her lift boxes onto the counter, feeling the old strength return. Not the kind born of violence, but of purpose. When a small boy peeked around the doorway clutching a toy car, Lucian froze. The boy smiled shyly. You're the man from the drawings. Lucian blinked. Drawings? The boy nodded. Miss Alina told us stories about the man who stopped bad people. Alina flushed. I simplified things. Lucian crouched, meeting the boy's gaze. Did she tell you he used to be one of them? The boy shook his head. No, she said you changed. Lucian smiled, something soft, real. Then she told it right. That evening, after the clinic closed, they walked along the waterfront. Streetlights glowed against the dark water. The city hummed with quiet life. Fishermen repairing nets, couples laughing in cafes. Alina slipped her hand into his. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The power? The chaos. He thought about it. Sometimes, but it's like missing an illness. You forget how sick you were. They stopped at the edge of the pier. The same sea that had once swallowed his gun now reflected the stars. Do you ever think they'll forgive you? She asked softly. I don't need them to, he said. I just need to forgive myself. She smiled faintly. That sounds like peace. He looked out at the endless dark horizon. It feels like it. Months passed. The world didn't end. No one came for him. The scars faded into stories told over coffee. The apartment filled with small noises. Laughter, radio music, the scrape of pencils over sketch paper. The ghosts stopped visiting. One morning, Lucian woke before Alina. The first light touched her face where she slept beside him. He reached for a notebook and began to write. Not confessions, not ledgers, just memory. The first line read, Once there was a man who thought redemption came in fire, but it came quietly, like dawn through a half-open window. He closed the notebook, stood, and stepped onto the balcony. Below the harbor glimmered. Fishermen were already casting nets. Bells rang from the church tower. He breathed deep, the air cold and new. Behind him, Alina stirred. Lucian, she murmured, still half asleep. What are you doing? Watching the world wake up, he said. She smiled without opening her eyes. Tell it good morning for me, he did. Softly, to no one and to everything. The day began again. Ordinary, imperfect, alive. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the past still existed, but it no longer owned him. Lucian De Rossi was no longer the man in the newspapers, the ghost in the docks, or the boss in the shadows. He was just a man standing in the light, learning what it meant to live when there was no one left to fear. And for the first time in all his years, dawn didn't feel like judgment. It felt like grace, Zadar 1 year later. The sea looked the same, calm, endless, but the city around it had changed. The new clinic sat on the corner of Calalarga Street. Sunlight spilling through wide windows onto walls painted the color of dawn. Inside, children's laughter echoed through the hall. Alina moved between the rooms, a clipboard in one hand, a smile ready for every small face that needed it. The rhythm of her days had become steady, the pulse of a place that healed what the world broke. At noon, she stepped outside. Across the street, Lucian knelt beside a row of saplings, soil staining his hands. The clinic's small garden had been his idea, something to grow instead of destroy. Still planting soldiers? She teased. He looked up, sun glinting off the streaks of silver in his hair. No soldiers. Just roots, she smiled. You're late for lunch. I was waiting for them to stand on their own, he said, brushing dirt from his palms. You know how it is. They walked back together, the silence between them no longer heavy, just familiar. Inside, the children had drawn new pictures on the clinic's wall. A house, a sea, and 2 figures standing in the light. Lucian paused to look at them. You told them that's us? Alina shrugged. They figured it out on their own. He laughed softly. Smart kids. Later, as the day faded, Lucian locked up the garden gate and stood watching the sunset burn gold over the water. Alina joined him, slipping her hand into his. Do you ever think about the past? She asked. Only when I need to remember why this matters, he said. They stood there quietly, as the light dimmed and the world turned blue. For the first time in years, Lucian didn't see ghosts in the dusk, only tomorrow. The wind carried the faint scent of salt and blossoms from the garden. Somewhere behind them, a child laughed, sharp and bright as the ringing of a bell, and for Lucian De Rossi, that sound was enough. If this story moved you, If it reminded you that even the darkest souls can find a little light, then don't leave just yet. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story that will make your heart race, ache and heal, all in one breath. And if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, share this video. Someone out there needs to hear it.